Good day and welcome to my talk. I'm Dr. Jeanne Brand from the Department of Viticulture and Oenology at Stellenbosch University. In this talk, I will discuss how we measure changes in sensory differences between premium, super and ultra-premium wines by adapting the sorting task. Wine style and quality are important factors considered during production, branding, benchmarking, and marketing. Currently, wine style is linked to quality using static sensory methods. Wines are typically profiled using a generic descriptive method that entails draining a panel or applying a rapid method where draining is not required. Quality scores and/or consumer liking ratings are then related to wine profiles using methods such as preference mapping. So what do we mean with a static sensory method? Static sensory methods are methods that take a snapshot of the sensory profile of a product or products at a given time. In the case of wine, usually 20 minutes to an hour after pouring samples and covering it with lids to allow the headspace in the glass to saturate with aromatic fragrant compounds. Dynamic sensory methods are used to measure changes in perception while a product is consumed. These measurements are typically taken over a short interval, for example 2 to 5 minutes. Methods such as temporal dominance of sensation fall into this category. Wine aroma definitely changes in the glass, but a glass of wine is very rarely consumed within 5 minutes. And changes over a longer time interval could be relevant and interesting to measure. The aim of this study was to investigate the changes in sensory perception while a wine is in a glass and being enjoyed. We were particularly interested in these dynamic sensory profile differences between premium, super, and ultra-premium wines. As a case study, we investigated Sauvignon Blanc wines. This study had two main objectives, namely to investigate the suitability of free sorting conducted at different time intervals after pouring a wine to obtain dynamic wine profiles, and secondly, to combine free dynamic sorting, quality scoring, and wine tier classification data to discriminate between premium, super, and ultra-premium wines. 9 Sauvignon Blanc wines were evaluated by 12 trained sensory panelists by means of multiple free sorting tasks conducted over a 45-minute period. Panelists were instructed to place similar samples together in the same group and different samples apart in different groups, and then provide 3 to 5 descriptors to describe the main sensory properties of each group as a whole. The same wines were evaluated by 12 wine industry professionals. A 20-point quality scoring exercise and the wine tier classification task were performed. Multiple factor analysis with correspondence analysis as base blocks was performed on the descriptors of the free sorting task to determine how and if sensory profiles change over time. Correspondence analysis was applied to the tier classification data to determine if winemakers could distinguish between the different tiers and to see if some of the tiers would group together. ANOVA was used to identify significant differences between quality scores of the different wines. In addition, correlation coefficients between quality scores and wine tier classification data were computed to see if these concepts are related when scored by winemakers. The first step during data analysis was to determine if the attributes generated during the sorting task could discriminate between the wines. CA plots constructed from the data obtained at different time intervals all showed explained variances of above 50% looking at factor 1 and 2. This is regarded sufficient for sensory data to look at similarity and differences between data points such as wines. What we can also see from this graph is that some samples grouped together and some were spread wider, and the same happened with the attributes. confirming that we did find differences and similarities between the wines in terms of the attributes using the sorting task. So this is just the graphs obtained for time 3 and 4, where we can see the same trend. It is very difficult to look at patterns just inspecting the CA plots. It is easier to interpret the projected points of the MFA. On this graph, it is clear that the data points related to each sample for the different points are spread quite widely. Look, for example, at sample A. If you look at A1, which is related to time point 1, A2 related to time point 2, A3 and 4, it is spread and covering almost half of the plot area. This is the case for most of the other samples, with maybe sample B as an exception. Looking at the RV coefficients, we can see that indeed the time points were different. A correlation coefficient of 0.35 can be seen for time point 1 and 2, which is really low and means that there wasn't a correlation. Then time point 1 and 3 can be regarded as similar because a correlation coefficient of 0.81 can be seen. But then again, time point 1 and time point 4 is different. So RV coefficients are measures of similarity between different configurations, and the configuration in this case relates to the different time points. The next question was, how do industry professionals classify wines in tiers, and is this related to quality scoring? Also, can differences be perceived for different wines evaluated in the study? The data obtained showed that the wines indeed differed in terms of quality, and this can be seen on the ANOVA Alice means plot. The different significant letters indicate that we have differences. From the CA plot, it is clear that consensus was reached on the tiers which the wines belong to, and that some samples belong to the same tier category, with the ultra premium tier having the highest correlation coefficient with quality, and the premium tier the lowest correlation coefficient with quality. It is clear that these concepts are rated similarly, and that we can trust the quality tier classification that we receive from winemakers. It's also interesting to note that we do not have to use both of these measurements moving forward. Since they are correlated, we can either choose tier classification or quality scoring when relating quality to the aroma profiles obtained during the sorting task. Now that we know that differences occurred, we can inspect a simpler graph to see how the wines changed over time. A line plot or a popular word cloud works well for this. If we look at wine A, an ultra-premium wine, it had a complex aroma profile initially, with notes such as grapefruit, green pepper, and pineapple. The green attributes changed from fresh to cooked or canned, and the tomato leaf became more prominent. Tropical notes such as pineapple became less prominent and were dominated by grapefruit at the later stages. This shows that although the profile changed, it developed and stayed relatively complex. Wine D, a premium wine, had a relatively complex profile as well initially, but had fewer aroma notes towards the end, with pineapple dominating the guava and grapefruit aromas. A comment made by one of the panelists during tea time was quite insightful. She said, "Some of these wines smell really nice when we start, and then just lose their potency much faster than the others. I wonder why." From the statistics, we can see that those wines losing their potency were the premium wines, and the wines that stayed complex were the ultra-premium wines. To conclude, free sorting conducted at 4 different time points during a 45-minute interval could be used to obtain insights related to dynamic profile changes of wines from different quality tiers. All the wine profiles changed, but the ultra-premium wines stayed fragrant and complex for longer in comparison to the premium wines. winemakers were able to classify wines into similar quality tiers, and this is therefore a concept understood similarly by different winemakers, and they are somehow calibrated with each other. The quality scores was also correlated with the wine tier perception, and we could therefore say that it's now safe to use the quality tier classification of winemakers, and we can trust them performing sensory in this way. We could also use the quality tier classifications to gain insights on the differences between the dynamic profiles of the wines. And it's clear that the favorable aromas perceived for ultra premium wines persisted longer than those perceived for premium wines. It's important to stress that the set of wines chosen for this specific project span the quality spectrum, and it might be more difficult to perform a similar analysis using wines that's more similar in quality. This workflow should also be tested, for example, with cultivars such as Chenin Blanc and Chardonnay, since these cultivars might be less fragrant, and Sauvignon Blanc is generally regarded as an expressive cultivar with clear differences related to the volatile compounds such as thiols and methoxypyrazines. It's also important to just say that the industry professionals used for this study were all from one region and frequently taste together, hence the consensus. An industry panel with judges from different regions or countries might not be able to classify tiers so efficiently and similarly. Thank you for listening to my talk. If you have any further questions, you are welcome to ask during this session or contact me at a later stage. Thanks again.